All right, so today has been a very busy work day and I had to work through my lunch. And so I'm a little behind on some chores I was hoping to get done today. And I also wanted to talk about a visit with a farmer that I had this weekend. It was a very productive conversation. I went and visited with him. I learned quite a bit from him. I learned some things to look for, maybe some things to avoid, just some general stuff. And it was pretty enlightening, especially for somebody that doesn't have any experience like I don't have. And so I'm gonna try and kind of cover some of those things while I try to get caught up on some of my work today. Twinkle's out here doing a little exploring at the barn and still learning his balance. Ain't that right, buddy? And the chickens are still curious about him. You'll get used to it. You'll be as graceful as a cat or a rock. My main motivation with actually going out and visiting this friend, well, hopeful friend, was actually more to build a relationship as opposed to actually gaining any real knowledge. One of the things I think is very important is reaching out and finding people that you can learn from and potentially even have a mentorship relationship with, if they're open to that. And if not, still having connections and maybe somebody that's willing to answer an occasional question for you, or be a source for, either materials, a source for potentially other livestock or gardening or whatever it is you might have. It's good to have contacts. And so my main goal with going out and meeting with him was actually to try and build a little bit of a relationship, more so than actually gaining any real knowledge from him. And I think, that's, again, very important to do. One thing I was very appreciative of is that, he was very gracious to me. He spent a lot of time with me, answering questions and showing me around his farm, explaining to me stuff that, I hadn't even thought to ask, which is all extremely helpful. But along the lines of building the relationship, we actually just sat and cut up and talked for probably like 2 hours, which was pretty great. And so I think that it was a successful adventure. Whether I learned anything or not, I think it was very successful in starting to build that relationship. So the farmer that I actually went to meet raises a couple of different things that I hope to raise one day. On his farm, he has chicken. He's got haired sheep. He actually has, and I'm going to butcher the pronunciation, I think it's catadine. Either way, he has haired sheep. I think he's still working on building his flock, he said, and he's only got about 8 or 10 right now. So it's still considered a pretty small flock. Oh, there comes Twinkle. And so wanted to ask questions about that because I'm very interested in trying to raise sheep for multiple reasons, and I may get into that. He's also raising coon pigs. I think he's got 4 or 5 of them, and he'll be probably downsizing on those as he culls this winter. And then, of course, he's got a couple of, I think they're Great Pyrenees Anatolian mixes as livestock guard dogs. And what else did he have? I think that was it for animals on his farm. He's a smaller farmer, which is why I wanted to talk to him, because what I'm working on and what he's working on, or what I'm working on and what he has already done, very much aligned with what I'm kind of hoping to learn. So the primary thing that I actually wanted to talk to him about were the sheep. And like I said, with the sheep, his flock is still pretty young. I think he said he's in his 2nd year with that particular herd. And one of the things that I kind of learned about are the different breeds of haired sheep. And so I knew there were different breeds, but what I didn't realize were which ones were, say, common here, which ones are maybe not so common here. The chickens are trying to sneak up on me here. And so I you know, after the conversation with him, I had some research to do, and what I found is that there's really, in my area, kind of 3 common breeds. There's the Dorper, there's the Catadon, and there is the St. Croix. And my understanding is that the Dorpers are the largest breed, but one of the things that you got to watch for are worms, which is not unique to them. Just something that I learned in having conversations again with the farmer, is that you got to watch for worms in your sheep, and depending on, you know, how you raise them and proximities and how clean everything is, there's a lot of factors that go into it, but keeping an eye on worms and their health is very important with sheep. And so of those 3 breeds, what I found through doing some research was actually that while the Dorper gets to be the largest of the 3, it tends to also be the most susceptible to worms. The Catadon is typically somewhere in the middle between size but also susceptibility. My understanding is the St. Croix is the least susceptible to the worms, but generally one of the smaller and slower growing ones. And so with the Dorpers, if I remember right, I think you can grow them up to slaughter weight in under a year. The Catadons take, you know, most of the year, and I think the St. Croix take longer, but don't quote me on that stuff. And most people found actually crossbreed the different breeds of sheep, and so you'll get a ram and maybe breed it a couple of years, maybe 2 years, get a new ram and breed, you know, a couple years, and they'll mix in other genetics of other breeds to try to help foster essentially this hybrid that's good for the area that they, you know, that the sheep are in. So I found that interesting, and that was mostly done through some reading, but it's I don't know, it's exciting to learn about some of this stuff. These guys keep running over here thinking I'm bringing them scraps of food or something. Yeah. And fun fact, my barred rock over there is definitely a little rooster, because the last about 2 or 3 days he started trying to crow real early in the mornings when I come let them out. And so I'm gonna see if I can't get that on film at some point. He sounds he sounds like a baby rooster. He's more squeak than crow, but it's pretty funny. So he's trying. What are you girls doing, huh? Checking things out? Checking out the cat, aren't you? Who's checking out the tree? Look how big he's getting. Look at you, Twinkle. Oh, learning how to prowl too? Oh, now you're just being lazy. Well, he'll be ready to start training for battle here soon, I think. He does a pretty effective job of hunting the crickets in the basement. What are you girls, camera shy? One of the other things that I learned while I was out there visiting was how to start trying to, you know, notice the things on the sheep that help identify age and health and well-being and things. And something that I thought was really fascinating was he mentioned looking at the teeth. And he said that the teeth are generally a pretty good indication of about how old the sheep is. And the reason for that is that the teeth will wear down the older they get, which, I mean, makes sense to a degree, but not something I had really thought about. And in all the research that I've done, not something I had read. But after Googling it, you know, after my conversation with him, there were quite a few people that said the same thing. And I was able to find some pictures and things. And it was pretty cool because he actually showed me on his, you know, kind of where they're at. And of course he knows the age of them, so it was easy to kind of compare his 1-year-old sheep and his 2-year-old sheep, and there wasn't maybe a huge difference, but there was definitely more wear. And so that was a fascinating kind of a fascinating thing to learn. Some of the other stuff that he mentioned, just kind of in well, I won't say in passing, but that he kind of showed me, but is maybe a little harder to explain. It's just kind of keep looking at their body and their activity and kind of gauging how they are, their health and well-being based on that. And so, you know, kind of checking out their body just like you would any other animal. And maybe, you know, a good comparison would be like a dog. You know, if you're seeing you know, ribs and a thinning, you know, waistline, they're probably not eating enough, or they have some sort of health issue. Of course, if they poop, you can kind of take a look at that and see, you know, if there's any red signs there, you know, and then you know, whether or not they're being lethargic or not. If they're active and they're moving around a lot and they're, you know, kind of doing their thing, that's a good sign. You know, if they're really lethargic and not moving, you know, that's a sign that maybe they're not doing so well. And, you know, that's maybe kind of obvious stuff, because pretty much every animal and person for that matter is the same way. As I've been filming, I've just been kind of checking out the net and making sure that I don't have grass grounding it out too bad. And as I'm walking around, cat's following me, and the chickens just can't help themselves. Go check him out every time. He instinctively seems to know not to touch that fence, even as a kitten. Well, I think he might have actually touched it. I spoke too soon. Either the chicken scared him or his nose touched it. I couldn't tell, but he shagged. Yeah, well, he'll be all right. This is there's not much going on here. It's just enough to keep the grass burned down a little bit and, you know, let you know that there's something there. I've been kind of going around and kind of pulling some of these big pieces out. It is burning it off. Even though I'm getting a decent voltage out of that thing, I don't think I've got enough to keep the, what is it, amps. I think amps is maybe the right terminology. I'm not an electrician here, but I've got plenty of volts, but I don't think I got enough amps out of that battery to keep the grass burned down real well, and also give a good jolt to something if it needs it. But it is burning the grass down. Sorry, got distracted. Did you get shocked, buddy, or did they scare you? Did you get shocked, or did they scare you? Yep, you're a good boy. Yes, you are. You're a good boy. Well, I think that's confirmation that they scared him. One of the other things that you know, we looked at was his pigs, as I said earlier. And you know, the coon-coons, he wasn't real thrilled with it. It was his first year, but he had them almost 12 months, and they weren't really up to slaughter weight yet. And you know, one of the challenges, he said, was that they're eating a ton, more than the table scraps and more than the corn that he grew for them, you know, and they're costing him quite a bit of money, and ultimately doesn't think he's going to really break even on them. And since he thinks he may not break even on them, he's really questioning whether or not he's going to do them again next year. And so I think he said he's going to at least put one in the freezer probably this fall, and then I think he said he's got 4 others, and those 4, I think he's going to go ahead and grow them out to where they should be, and then he'll kind of do the math from there. But you know, he's going to have to overwinter a couple pigs, and you know, his opinion was that they just hadn't been worth it. What was kind of nice to see, though, was like personally see their temperament, which is what I was looking for. You know, I've got 2 young children, you know, a 3rd one on the way, and I don't want something that's going to be real aggressive with them. But I also, you know, and along with that, I want them to be able to, you know, potentially, you know, get exposure to them and kind of grow around them. You know, the kids grow around them so that they kind of understand, you know, the animal's purpose here, and, you know, understand what our role is in taking care of them. And so I want something that could be kind of maybe a best of both worlds. And, you know, if those are going to take that long to grow out, I'm not sure if they're the right ones for me. So maybe, you know, I might end up looking to see if I can find something that's maybe more of a medium-sized pig. You know, I'm not super familiar with all the different breeds at this point. I've done a little bit of research, but I think I'm still gonna have to do a little more research on those guys. One of the other things that he showed me was his electric fences. And since he had bought land that was, you know, I'll say undeveloped, it was kind of raw land, he took that land and they built the house on it and started building the, you know, all the different fencing areas, the buildings and stuff like that. And I think he pretty much had a clean slate. And so all of his fence was, you know, wooden post with poly wire. And, you know, I've got my, you know, electric netting here, and I really like the idea of doing more rotational grazing, which isn't exactly what he's doing. You know, he's only got a few acres, and in fact, I'm pretty sure I've got a couple more acres here to work with. But one of the things that he's doing is he had built, like, I think 3 different paddocks on the property, and he's just kind of moving them between the paddocks every couple of weeks or months or so. And then he's, you know, gonna have to hay feed them over the winter, which is fine. And one of the things that I want to do is do a little more mobile. But I say that with you know, the poly wire. In his case, I wonder if some of my permanent fencing, I shouldn't replace it with a fence more like that, where I've got the, you know, the poly wire stretched down, as opposed to some of that woven wire fencing that I've got around the property, because that should help keep the weeds and stuff down and also keep the animals in. And it would give me a good wire to tap from when I set up kind of more mobile areas, which is what I'm hoping to do. But I'm a little torn because, you know, the permanent fencing's already here. I don't have to do much with it. You know, I really just need to kind of fix up a couple of the posts that are maybe laid down a little. But ultimately, you know, I can really just kind of go with it. The downside is I'm afraid that, you know, the sheep would kind of hover in one area, and you know, that's kind of typical. And I don't have but one cross section fenced off near the back, which is out of sight. And then on top of that, I don't have any livestock guard animals. So, you know, my options are a little bit limited in protecting them. And so I think having a good electric fence is going to be my best option, at least in the interim. All of that assumes that sheep are what I end up going with, which I haven't yet decided. I'm really leaning towards the sheep. I think the sheep will make a good, I'm gonna say, easy-ish next step for me, given my time constraints. And so I've been looking at the sheep, and, you know, with what I've learned, I'm really leaning towards either the St. Croix or the Catadins, or some sort of crossbreed of the 2 of those, potentially with the Dorper. I want to make sure that I've got weight to put in the freezer, feed the family and that sort of thing, but I don't want to I don't want to deal with the worms and stuff, which is also a reason why I want to work on, you know, rotating them more. They're less likely to eat in their own, you know, eat and stand and walk around in their own feces when they're not on that area for months at a time. and that also allows any worms in the system to die off and not go back into the animal, because their life cycle will have terminated before the sheep rotate back to that area. And again, that's a little bit of that permaculture approach that I've talked about, and that's kind of the goal. And if I get everything set up right, the idealistic goal would be to get these guys in the mobile chicken coop behind the sheep. And while following the sheep isn't as effective, maybe as following, larger animals, I think it could still be effective at helping rebuild some of my land from, a lot of brambles to, more like hardy quality pasture. The last thing of note from my visit with him was regarding his livestock dogs. And he mentioned that his intention is to breed a working dog sometime next year. And based on my timelines and when I'm hoping to maybe target getting another animal for the farm, that might be a good opportunity. You coming to check things out? You guys really like this camera. Yeah. Yeah, a lot of them will let me pet them. Mr. Rooster still gets hesitant. They like to try and eat my ring because it's shiny. I've also started noticing them to try and establish their little pecking order. And he's definitely been throwing his weight around. But I've got one hen somewhere. I think it's this one right here. This one. I think she's the one that keeps trying to give it back to him. So she might be the top of the roost. But anyways, back to the dogs. If he's breeding them for next year, then the timing will be perfect, because I know that it's important to get a guard dog with when you have animals for them to guard. And if I'm going to get sheep, I want to have a guard dog with them. So if I can get them at the same time and let them kind of grow together, I think that'll be an ideal scenario. And out here, I don't think I have a whole lot of predator pressure, really, at least not right now, but I have heard coyotes, I have heard wild dogs, and so there's definitely some. And my neighbor behind me has a dog. My neighbor across the street has a couple of dogs. None of those are guard dogs. And then of course my neighbor across the field here, they've got a dog. Again, none of them are guard dogs. All of them bark and make noise and stuff when an animal comes around. So that's helping, I think. But it's not really establishing a good boundary, and they're not outside dogs. So while those dogs spend a lot of time outside, they're not permanent outdoor pets. So I want to make sure that if I am going to invest in getting animals here, that I take all the precautions I can to protect them. Yep, that includes you. That includes you. And you. My Twinkle's quite upset that he can't get in here right now. You wanna come see me? Maybe, kinda, sorta. You can come peck at the ring like everybody else wants to. Alright. I'm not gonna bother your ladies. You're fine, buddy. See, he is about as big as my adult hens already. And if you can catch him up beside these, he pretty much dwarfs them. That's a good way to compare it right there. And along the lines with the guard dog, and along the same lines with trying to build a relationship, now that I've taken the time to go out and meet with him, you know, learn from him and build that relationship, not only do I know somebody now who is going to ethically breed a working livestock dog, I know the farmer personally now, and he also knows that I may be an interested customer when it comes time for him to breed them. So hopefully that, you know, gives me a good insight to what I'm getting, who I'm getting it from, and that's a nice feeling to have. Can you say hi?
Hi.
So Noah and I are out here doing a little late evening chores. Hey there, Twinkle. So I found out kind of a little bit last minute that I might have an opportunity to get a bunch of wood chips for free, and so I'm doing a little late evening preparation just in case. And so the lighting on this video is not going to be super great, but I feel like I should at least take a little quick, you know, what's going on. So this, you know, the trailer that I bought with the tractor is the only trailer that I have right now. And I've got a much smaller trailer, but they've got a couple scoops worth of wood chips. And I don't want to shovel it by hand. And so what I'm kind of planning to do, if assuming I get, you know, assuming they message me back and I can go get them, is I'm going to actually load the wood chips up here on the front of the trailer. And I needed something to kind of help keep them from falling off. So just throwing together a couple, you know, sidewalls for this to keep stuff in. And, you know, I'll do the other side in the morning. Again, it just assumes I can get them, but I'm out of work for a week, and we were planning on going on a fall trip with the camper, but since we sold it, we're doing some stuff with the kids, and so I'll have a few days to do some work around here, and this upcoming week will be a good week to get prepared for the winter. So, oh, there comes Noah. Here he comes, fast and furious. Anyhow, we got some more chores to do, don't we? All right, we got finished up with the chickens, didn't we? Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, what do we have left? We got to scoop the litter box?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's our...
Mommy, I don't want.
Yeah, you want to help?
Yeah.
All right, hold on, wait. I got to take you out there and show you. But it's a little bit too dark, so let's tell everybody good night.
Good night.